South Florida today on NBC6 HD.
Chronic fatigue syndrome, or CFS, as it's commonly referred to, is a devastating illness that affects millions of Americans. Until now, there's been no known cause or cure. But breakthrough research now reveals a link between chronic fatigue syndrome and what's called a retrovirus. I'm joined this morning by Dr. Nancy Klimas, Director of the Department of Immunology at the UM School of Medicine and the VA Medical Center, nationally known not only for her research, but her treatment of CFS patients. Welcome, Dr. Klimas.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Oh, we're glad to have you. We're honored to have you. First of all, how significant is this link to the retrovirus, and what is a retrovirus?
It's very exciting, and this is very early research, and it needs a lot more work. It needs to be validated. But this study came out just 4 weeks ago in Science, which is the top magazine that we publish our good science in. Can't beat Science, very good publication. And it's linked this retrovirus, which is called XMRV, to chronic fatigue syndrome. Retroviruses are cousins to the HIV virus. Almost everyone knows the HIV virus because that causes AIDS. And retroviruses like to get into the immune system and muck things up. And in chronic fatigue syndrome, the immune system's been muddled with. And so it's the first time we've really had a virus that seemed to fit everything we know about these patients with chronic fatigue syndrome. So
I assume that the study must have found that lots of people with CFS have this retrovirus as opposed to people who don't have CFS.
Exactly. Only 3 to 4% of the population had this virus, the healthy people, and 67% of the chronic fatigue patients by one test, and maybe as many as 95% by another.
How far will this go to validate CFS as a real disease? Certainly in the beginning and maybe even now, lots of physicians, were putting it off as just, people being lazy, sending them off to psychologists and psychiatrists.
These patients have suffered. I mean, it is a terrible illness to have. First, it's medically devastating. You're profoundly fatigued. It's not tired like I didn't sleep last night.
Let's put up some of the symptoms of this disease now and go through them if we can, because there are myriad symptoms: memory or concentration impairment, sore throat, tender lymph glands, muscle and joint pain, and then we've got another page of symptoms. There we go: headaches, unrefreshing sleep, and most importantly, debilitating fatigue. And in the interest of full disclosure, my wife has CFS, so I'm very familiar with these symptoms. And they virtually render a person unable to perform the daily life tasks on many days of the week.
Absolutely. In fact, by the definition of the illness, it has to be so debilitating that you give up most of your daily life tasks just to exist, just to manage to hang on. And it's very painful. There's 5 of those symptoms are inflammatory. They're all painful. It really affects your ability to concentrate and even do simple tasks like working on the computer or reading a book from cover to cover.
Will this discovery of the retrovirus make this a more real disease to physicians all over the country? People who
I am seriously hoping so.
Okay, because that's all you do pretty much, but a lot of physicians don't believe in this disease.
Yeah, it's like Santa Claus, They consider a medical illness something you can believe in or not believe in. I've never understood that because the science behind this illness is very strong. These patients have tremendous inflammation. You can measure it.
Now, if you've got a virus now that you've identified, does that maybe mean that this could be contagious?
That's a really good question. We don't know the answer to that. Most retroviruses are not all that contagious. But if you take HIV, for example, people are worried, there is some concern. But it would appear, at least in these very initial kinds of studies, that it is more something you get from mother to child, from mother or father to child, that you're born with the virus.
And then there's a triggering event of some kind?
Exactly. Something like, say, mononucleosis comes along and kicks the immune system off, and boom, you're sick as the devil and you don't get better.
Now, you're clearly in a segment of medicine that both the patients and the physicians and the researchers say is underfunded. Might this finding help funding?
I can say that the entire field of chronic fatigue syndrome in this country, if you add up all the dollars together that the NIH is putting out, we've had HIV grants that were bigger than that at the University of Miami. It's terrible. It's a very underfunded area. And there's maybe 12 or 14 funded studies right now compared to thousands and thousands.
I got to run, but we're out of time. Did I read somewhere that you said you'd rather have HIV than CFS?
I said that in the context of 2009. I have an HIV clinic, and almost all of my guys are really healthy. They're just getting on with their lives. My chronic fatigue patients, I'd love to see it, one that's feeling good today.
All right, Dr. Klimas, Thank you for being with us. Now, if you'd like to make a donation to CFS Research, please go to med.miami.edu/give. Under gift designation, choose other, then write Morton Gift Fund for CFS Research. If you'd like to make an appointment at the new CFS private clinic, which we didn't get to talk about, go to cfsclinic.com.